Edwin King, an American writer of horror, science fiction, fantasy, suspense, and supernatural literature, was born on September 21, 1947. His books have sold more than 350 million copies, and many of them have been made into movies, television shows, miniseries, and comic books. King has authored 5 non-fiction works and 64 novels, 7 of which were published under the pen name Richard Bachman. Additionally, he has produced about 200 short stories, the majority of which have been collected in books. King was born on September 21, 1947, in Portland, Maine. Donald Edwin King, his father, was born in Indiana with the last name Pollock but changed it to King as an adult. After serving in World War II, he became a traveling vacuum salesman. Nellie Ruth King was King's mother. King supposedly saw one of his friends get hit by a train as a boy, though he has no recollection of it. After leaving the house to play with the youngster, King reportedly returned stunned and dumbfounded, according to his relatives. The family didn't find out about the friend's passing right away. The psychological inspiration behind some of King's harsher writings may have come from this incident, according to some experts. King attended Durham Elementary School and earned his high school diploma in 1966 in Lisbon Falls, Maine. As a voracious reader of EC horror comics, such as Tales from the Crypt, he showed an early passion in the genre. He later paid homage to the comics in his script for Creepshow. While still in school, he started writing for enjoyment by contributing articles to Dave's Rag, the mimeographed newspaper his brother published. Later, he started selling stories to his friends that were based on movies he had seen. When his teachers found out, he was obliged to refund the profits. I Was a Teenage Grave Robber, which was serialized over 4 issues, 3 published and 1 unpublished, of a fanzine called Comics Review in 1965, was the first of his stories to be independently published. The next year, Marv Wolfman's fanzine Stories of Suspense reprinted it as In a Half-World of Terror, with revisions. King also received a Scholastic Art and Writing Award when he was a teen. King enrolled in the University of Maine in 1966 and earned a Bachelor of Arts in English there in 1970. His daughter Naomi Rachel was born in that year. He participated in a writing workshop led by Burton Hatlin and authored a piece for the student publication the Maine campus called King's Garbage Truck. King worked a variety of jobs to support himself while attending school, such as those of a janitor, a gas station attendant, and an employee of an industrial laundry. Following one of Professor Hatlin's classes, he met his future wife, fellow student Tabitha Spruce, inside the university's Fogler Library, and the two was married in 1971. In 1967, King sold Startling Mystery Stories, his first published short story, The Glass Floor. King received his degree to teach high school after graduating from the University of Maine, but since he was unable to start teaching right away, he supplemented his meager salary by selling short stories to publications for males, like Cavalier. In the anthology Night Shift, many of these early works were reprinted. A men's magazine called Adam published the short story, The Raft. He was enraged because one of the traffic cones knocked his muffler loose, so he stole some of them. He was later charged with petty theft and given a $250 fine, but he was unable to pay it. However, a check for The Raft, then known as The Float, later showed up, and King cashed it to cover the fine. King was appointed a teacher at Hampton Academy in Hampton, Maine, in 1971. He kept writing short stories for publications and developing novel plots. He created the first drafts of his anti-war novel Sword in the Darkness and his dystopian novel The Long Walk between 1966 and 1970, but neither book was issued at the time. Only The Long Walk was later published in 1979. King's book Carrie was approved by the Doubleday Publishing House in 1973. Although it was King's 4th book, it was his first to be made public. Using a portable typewriter owned by his wife Tabitha, he composed it. The first 3 pages of a short tale that King had written for Cavalier magazine were thrown in the trash. He expanded the story into a novel after Tabitha found the pages and urged him to finish it, promising to assist him with the feminine perspective. King's phone was inoperable when Carrie was chosen for publication. In late March or early April 1973, King received a telegram from Doubleday editor William Thompson, who later became a personal friend. It read, "Carrie officially a Doubleday book. Advance against royalties of $2,500. Congrats, kid, the future lies ahead, Bill." King claimed that he used the advance to purchase a new Ford Pinto. The paperback rights were purchased by New American Library on May 13, 1973, for $400,000, which was divided between them in accordance with King's agreement with Doubleday. King's Carrie launched his literary career and became a major horror classic. It was turned into a lucrative horror movie in 1976. Salem's Lot was released in 1975. He stated in a 1987 edition of the Highway Patrolman magazine, "To me, the tale seems somewhat commonplace. It holds a particularly dear place in my heart." King and his family relocated to Boulder, Colorado, where he wrote The Shining after his mother passed away, published 1977. In 1975, the family moved back to Auburn, Maine, where he finished The Stand, published 1978. His third and youngest kid, Owen Phillip, joined the family on a brief trip to England in 1977. In the following fall, they moved back to Maine, where King started instructing creative writing at the University of Maine. Different Seasons, a collection of 4 novellas by Stephen King that has a more somber dramatic bent than his best-known works of horror fiction, was released in 1982. 3 of its 4 novellas were transformed into Hollywood movies: Stand By Me, 1986, The Shawshank Redemption, 1994, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, An Apt Pupil, 1998, which was based on the novella of the same name. In the late 1970s, King started what would eventually become a collection of interconnected tales about Roland, a lone gunslinger who hunts down the Man in Black, in a parallel world that combines Middle-earth from J.R.R. Tolkien with the American Wild West from Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. The magazine of fantasy and science fiction, edited by Edward L. Furman, first released the first of these tales, The Dark Tower, The Gunslinger, in 5 parts from 1977 to 1981. The 8-book epic series The Dark Tower, which King authored and published sparingly over the course of 4 decades, carried on the gunslinger's story, 1978–2012. Under the name Richard Bachman, King released a few brief books in the late 1970s and early 1980s, including Rage, 1977, The Long Walk, 1979, Roadwork, 1981, The Running Man, 1982, and Thinner, 1984. This was done to assuage his concerns that his fame was an accident and to see whether he could repeat his achievement. Another factor was that publishing regulations at the time only permitted 1 book per year. He chose the band's name since he is a fan of the hard rock group Bachman Turner Overdrive. Steve Brown, a persistent bookshop employee in Washington, D.C., who spotted similarities between the works and later discovered publishers' records at the Library of Congress that identified King as the author of one of Bachman's novels, revealed Richard Bachman to be King's alias. The result was a news release announcing Bachman's death, which was allegedly caused by cancer of the pseudonym. When Stephen King's book The Dark Half, about a pen name turning against a writer, was published in 1989, King dedicated it to the departed Richard Bachman, and when Desperation was published in 1996, the companion book The Regulators had the Bachman byline. King suggests spending 4 to 6 hours every day reading and writing in order to become a good writer. You can't expect to become a competent writer if you can't find the time for it. He has a daily word count goal of 2,000 words, and he won't stop writing until it's been reached. He also offers a straightforward definition of literary talent. I consider you talented if you wrote something for which someone mailed you a check, if you cashed the check and it did not bounce, and if you subsequently used the money to pay the light bill. King responds when asked why he writes, "There was nothing else I was required to do, so the answer to that is very straightforward. I love to write stories because I was born to tell them. This is my motivation. I truly can't picture doing anything else or stopping what I'm doing." Additionally, he is frequently questioned about why he creates such horrifying tales, to which he replies, "Why do you think I have a choice?" When writing a narrative, King typically starts by contemplating a what-if scenario, such as what would occur if a writer was abducted by a cruel nurse in Colorado. In his short stories, novellas, and novels, King frequently incorporates authors as characters or makes reference to made-up publications. Examples include Paul Sheldon, the primary character in Misery, adult Bill Denborough in It, Ben Mears in Salem's Lot, and Jack Torrance in The Shining. By adding himself as a character in the Dark Tower series starting with The Dark Tower v. Wolves of the Calla, he has taken this to shattering the fourth wall. King has a history of using drugs and alcohol excessively. In On Writing, he discussed his battles with addiction. King has written of his terrible drinking problem at this time, claiming that he was inebriated when giving the eulogy at his mother's burial. King's mother passed away from uterine cancer not long after Carrie's release in 1974. King admitted on Creating in 2000 that he can hardly remember writing Cujo since his drug habits were so severe in the 1980s. King's family and friends organized an intervention soon after Cujo came out, throwing proof of his addictions, including beer cans, cigarette butts, grams of cocaine, Xanax, Valium, Nyquil, Robitussin, and mouthwash, in front of him. In the late 1980s, King sought counseling and became sober, as he described in On Writing. Around 4:30 p.m. on June 19, 1999, King was strolling down Main State Route 5 in Lovell, Maine. King was struck by minivan driver Brian Edwin Smith, who was preoccupied by an unrestrained dog moving in the backseat. King landed in a depression in the ground about 14 feet, 4 meters, from Route 5's pavement. Early accounts from Oxford County Sheriff Officer Matt Baker at the time said King had been struck from behind, and several witnesses reported the driver was sober and not speeding or acting recklessly. Smith was later detained and charged with aggravated assault and endangering others while driving. He was given a 6-month county jail sentence, suspended, and a 1-year driving license suspension after entering a guilty plea to the lesser offense of endangering others while operating a vehicle. King was in a lot of agony, but he was able to provide the deputy his family's phone numbers so they could reach him. After being taken to Northern Cumberland Hospital in Bridgeton, he was airlifted to Lewiston's Central Maine Medical Center, CMMC. He remained at CMMC until July 9 due to his injuries, which included a shattered hip, a collapsed right lung, multiple fractures in his right leg, and a scalp laceration. His leg's bones were so badly broken that physicians first thought about amputating it before stabilizing the bones with an external fixator. King returned to work in July following 5 surgeries in 10 days and physical treatment, despite the fact that his hip was still broken and he could only sit for a short period of time until the pain became intolerable. Smith's van cost $1,500 and was bought by King's attorney and 2 others, allegedly to keep it off of eBay. King was disappointed because he had dreamed about breaking the van, as it was ultimately wrecked at a junkyard. Bram Stoker Awards, World Fantasy Awards, and British Fantasy Society Awards have all been given to King. He received the Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters from the National Book Foundation in 2003. Additionally, he has won honors for his contributions to literature throughout his entire body of work, including the 2007 Grand Master Award from the Mystery Writers of America and the 2004 World Fantasy Award for Life Achievement. He received a National Medal of Arts in 2015 for his services to literature from the U.S. National Endowment for the Arts. King is regarded as one of the greatest authors of all time. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more.